Andrew, as I said, I'll talk to Ross in a moment, but cost of living front and centre in question time. I'm interested in your political take here. How's Labor going to walk this fine line between needing to address household pain, we've got this budget coming up in October, and also saying none of this is our fault? How long will that wash?
With great difficulty, Peter, but I think the budget is the test they deserve, to be frank. You've got to give them a couple of months in, but there are no easy answers because, as you know, the more stimulus you put in the economy in terms of handouts to families, all that kind of thing, the more you drive inflation up. So it's a vicious circle where you can't do it. Then you've only got one lever, and that's a bit of fiscal management. So a bit of a test for Jim Chalmers. They reckon he's working hard at it, Katie Gallagher and him. But let's see where the budget numbers end up. And, you know, they already had $14 to $18 billion worth of promises, I guess. So you've got to facilitate that and cut at the same time. But I'll tell you one thing they're not doing, that's extending the petrol excise cut, even though there's perhaps an argument for
well, let me go to that.
Because all the inflation measures, that's one of the biggest. So you could argue the stimulus wouldn't have as deleterious an effect on inflation as keeping petrol prices high. But they are adamant they're getting rid of that because they think they're going to have to get rid of it at some point or another, and it's better earlier in the term politically to do it.
Yeah, I was intrigued, I'd probably better say dismayed to see that the coalition wants to push the government on that issue. They want, it's due to end in September, as you say, and the coalition is reported as saying that they want this extended. It's a $3 billion budget hit. I don't support it at all, but why the coalition change of heart here?
What's interesting, you know what they're telling me this afternoon, Peter? They're saying it was just a question from Peter Dutton in question time. I think it was the first or second yesterday. And they were just asking the question. In other words, they say Peter Dutton doesn't necessarily support that approach. He just thought he'd ask the question.
Who's running the strategy group there?
Yeah, well, you said it, Peter. And, you know, you've been at the centre of a fair few strategy group meetings. I think it's a strange approach. I think maybe they were sniffing the wind, but it didn't really work, did it? Because you and I both came away with that impression, as would most Australians, and apparently now they're backing away from it, really.
Well, they should at a rate of knots, because I think it's madness. I think it's madness at the time they did it. It's not the coalition way. It's not the Liberal Party way. But there's a few things at the moment I don't think are the Liberal Party way, but we'll see what happens. One thing I have to commend them for today was that statement from the opposition leader, a discussion in the party room about nuclear. Finally, we're getting one of the major parties coming out and saying, look, whether you want nuclear or not, Australians have to have a rational debate about this. We have to look at the modern iterations of modern nuclear power. We've got to think about it. If we really are about lowering emissions, we've got to think about it for Australia. I think this is a good move.
Yes, and the government immediately said it costs more, but I think the argument around this is in 5 to 10 years you have smaller modular reactors. Someone said to me once the size of a phone booth or something that don't cost that much. So, but in some ways it's a way for Peter Dutton to move the thing forward when he's copped a whack, at least in the cities, on the issue, the coalition at the election. So he's saying, look, we are about alternatives, we are about energy policy as well, but we're not going to go with Albanese on this one. He's going to sit back and see what happens with energy prices and the rest. He says Australia shouldn't be locked in. So they'll do a review. Let's see what it comes up with. But as reported, he's told his party room in order to placate the moderates, I guess, they'll have a bigger target than Morrison's. That's not hard to promise because on the trajectories, that target was always...
Well, they were already over-delivering.
It's probably going to be 35%.
That target...
You know.
That original 26 to 28% target was a Paris commitment target. It was agreed by the Abbott government cabinet on the proviso that there would be no harm to the economy, backed in by Turnbull, backed in by Morrison. We've been told that they were plugging ahead of that target anyway. Let's see what that looks like. I'd hate to see it's 35%, but let's say it's more than what it was. I think with the nuclear debate, I think it's a mature point. I think we are a mature country. We should be able to look at nuclear. Clearly, renewables are not cheap, despite the tosh that we heard from Chris Bowen today. But also, I think Australians, it flushes out those who are all about lowering emissions, particularly the Greens and those who voted teal in those teal seats. If you are about lowering emissions, the only proven baseload option now in existence is nuclear. So if you can't support nuclear, you've got to wonder how much you really support lowering emissions.
I guess, but you can win the intellectual argument. The challenge is going to be to win the vote. So he has to convince the people in some of those teal seats. It's as simple as that. If you need 18 seats, you're going to need a few of them.
Well, talk to me about Stuart Ayres. Talk to me about an election where they're going to be in with a fight for their lives to survive in March. More and more people are reported inside the Perrottet government that they're walking away from him. Pretty lonely there in Macquarie Street in Sydney. He admitted today that one of his colleagues has asked him to consider his future. Now, Eleni Petnos, another minister, copped an anonymous bullying complaint. She went in a day or so. But this Ayres stuff has gone on for weeks and weeks and weeks. How is this going to play out?
Well, I think Stuart Ayres will probably be gone by Friday. And the trigger will be that review into the Barilaro appointment process Perrottet will use in order to sack his minister. But the way Stuart Ayres has carried on, I'm not sure he'll go that quietly. And he's the partner of Maurice Payne. They're a bit of a team. You're right, Petnos went straight away once the Premier indicated she should go. The problem with hanging on to Ayres for so long in this, it does raise questions as to how much Perrottet knew when. Now, he would just say, I think, well, the review's taking a long time, but really does make you raise your eyebrows, doesn't it? The whole thing sort of stinks, to be honest with you. And it has been put to me it's more incompetence than conspiracy theory or political stupidity. I believe that. But once you've engaged in political stupidity, you need to make decisions quickly to ensure that's fixed. And Dominic Perrottet has shown his inexperience, in my opinion, in not doing that. And it could really cost him an election time in March because they look like a rebel, Peter. It's as simple as that. It's the last mainland state with the coalition in charge and they look like a rebel. And it's just unravelled so quickly.
It has the stench of the old Keneally government in the dying days, then you'll remember well. And look, you're right, it hasn't been handled well at all. They've just bled on it for weeks and weeks and weeks. Andrew Clennell, thank you as always.